Hi, good morning. Good morning. How is everyone on today? I wanted to bring you a story on a basketball protege, Aquira DeCosta. Now, she is making her comeback after being sex trafficked, okay? And so I want to get into this story, but I did want to share a few highlights with you with this young woman. There's obviously some other things that she has accomplished while she was out on the basketball court, but highlights is she's actually from Sacramento, California. That's her hometown. She attended St. Mary High School, class of 2018, and her position rank was number one, and overall rank was third, okay? And she actually signed with Baylor University. But however, before she signed with Baylor University, she actually considered, USC Trojans. She considered the Louis Cardinals, South Carolina Gamecocks, or, even the Tennessee Lady Volunteers. She also worked to provide meals to the homeless twice a month, and she studied communications to aspire to become an analyst. Now, she was kidnapped, and so she realizes that her desire to play in the WNBA, but she also knows that they can give her. She believes that they can give her a platform to bring more awareness to sex trafficking. Now, the modern day experts say that it's modern day slavery. These experts out here saying that it's modern day slavery. But I want to kind of beg the difference. I believe that this has happened of decades and decades and decades. You can go all the way back to so many years ago and keep going back, that human trafficking is a big thing, and it was underground a lot, and now people are coming above ground, and it's becoming more and more um, common above ground. But I believe it's been happening forever, and they're doing it, broad daylight, nighttime, evening. They are sex trafficking young women and women, okay? And so this is not, to me, in my opinion, modern day slavery. This is what it is. And it sounds like these experts, I don't know, or you can't minimize this situation and what's going on. You cannot minimize it. It's something that needs to be talked about. And when they do catch the perpetrators, they need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. It shouldn't be a slap on the hand. It shouldn't be minimum, jail time or prison time. It should be some big time. They should be paying big time in restitution, because what happens with victims, they have to go through therapy. They need therapy. They need to be able to get their life back together, and there's a lot that involves a victim that has been trafficked like this, and then when they are finally able to be released from their trafficker, being able to try to get their life back together, it's not an easy task. There needs to be a good support system involved as well, and and it takes money, counseling, good insurance policies if you have that, if you will, and so we should not, as experts out here, I'm not saying I am, but as those experts say, we should not be trying to downplay uh, this particular crime, because it is a crime, and it shouldn't be downplayed that it's just some type of slavery. Yeah, it is a form of slavery, but it's more than just uh, modern day slavery. It's more than just a form of slavery. So let's get into this with her. She's having recurring nightmares, is what she says. But she's saying a man chases her down the street, and she says so. She hears footsteps behind her, and as she picks up speed, the perpetrator picks up speed. Okay, and as she starts to run, they start to run. She runs faster, as fast as she can, and they're coming up on her, and the footsteps are trailing her, draw closer and closer, so she can hear footsteps getting closer and closer as she's running as fast as she can. So she peers over her shoulder, and the man raises a handgun. Bang. See, that's the thing. And they don't just come with themselves. A lot of them come with weapons. It could be a knife, as in this other young lady's case that was taken at knife point in a Des Moines, Iowa apartment building and forced into her trafficker's apartment. Here, this man has a gun. And so at home in Stockton, she wakes up with a jolt, panting, heart drumming. She scans her bedroom. the man from the nightmare, the man who she says held her captive for 3 months this year while sexually exploiting her, is nowhere to be found. She is safe. But she woke up to these nightmares. And I'm going to use these words. I usually don't like to use certain words on YouTube or any other channel. But you know what? This is what it is. And I'm going to use these words because, long as they're not vulgar words, but this is what I'm covering in this particular article. And I tried to get a hold of the other article and I started reading it, but it kept blocking me out on the San Francisco Chronicle. So I was able to find this article, on another website. And so she says, in those dreams, everything feels so real. It really feels like she says it feels like she's dying. And just 4 years have passed since she was one of the nation's most coveted girls basketball, recruits. She's very tall. She's 6'2", and she played forward. That was my position when I was in high school. I played forward as well. So I get a little smile when I hear about, young women playing forward, because I was in high school playing forward, and I was pretty good at it. I could jump pretty high and run really fast and snatch rebounds. So I just give my little pat on the back for that. But that was so many years ago. But anyway, getting back to this. So she has the rare speed and athleticism, and she was actually headed for a top college program and a potentially lucrative pro career before a cascade of misery and loss almost robbed her of everything. Now, when she can set aside her fear, she has a different vision, a comeback. So she wants to come back. So she's done multiple interviews with the Chronicle, which was the San Francisco Chronicle, in recent weeks as she rebuilt her career. DeCosta recounted how a man with a history of human trafficking, see, he had a history of it. So a lot of them don't, right? A lot of them are not just their first time doing it. A lot of them have a history of it, and they've been charged and released or let out. They have a history of it, and so he has a history of human trafficking and exploitation. Kidnapped her in February outside a Sacramento apartment in broad daylight. And see, that's what I'm saying. They're getting bolder and bolder. It's not just underground anymore. These perpetrators, traffickers, are doing it in broad daylight. And they're probably watching certain females. They're watching them. And you have to look at if they're a public figure. And she was actually a public figure. She was out there. She was playing basketball. They were highlighting her young career. And she was a public figure. And also, he might have been following what happened with her girlfriend, where her girlfriend was murdered. All type of stuff. And when things are put out there in the public, it gives people, other people, predators and perpetrators and criminals, it gives them information. And they start looking at that information and, picking out who they're going to, traffic, who they're going to attack, who they're going to capture. And when that happens, the victim really has been put in the spotlight and at risk for anything to happen, because they're in the spotlight doing what they think, and the reporters and analysts and all these people are talking about it. And sometimes people become victims of being put in the spotlight, because people like these perpetrators, criminals, are seeking, they're out their next victim. And so they look at all of that, and they might even study their backgrounds and where they came from and what they've been doing. And that makes, the victim vulnerable to these criminals. And so, so she said in that next 12 weeks, once she was captured, she lived in what she called a house of horrors in another part of Sacramento. And strange enough, a lot of times they're right there in the same city, maybe even a few miles from where actually they were living or where it happened at. Think about the case in Ohio with the 3 women, they were girls at the time. They were in Ohio. in Ohio, in the same city, being held captive, false imprisonment against their will, being abused, their whole life taken away from them like that. And this man, I believe, if I recall correctly, took his life in prison. And I figure that's the coward way out. You know, they are so tough, so big and bad. And then when they get caught, a lot of them don't survive in prison for one way or the other. You know, and so it's really sad that she actually was in the same city, just another part of Sacramento, that this man did that, the trafficker. Uh, you know, and a lot of them are not what color you think they are. Some of them look like us, people of color, trafficking other young women of color. And that's why I think that is so important that if we have to go after everyone's involved, not just one person. Not just one person. And I'm not, we talk about everybody involved. Everybody that had a hand in this. And trafficking young people, young girls, young women. It couldn't just be one person. And so I wonder how many people have a hand in this particular situation here, because we know in other cases, and in another major case, there was a lot of hands in that. But in this case, I wonder how many hands as far as who was working behind the scenes with this situation, with this man, and will they be held accountable? And just to clear up what I was saying in this other major case, there were people, and I'm talking about the parents that were doing the trafficking. In that case, I'm talking about, let me clear that up because I don't want people saying, but I'm talking about the parents that were trafficking in that other case, and they were doing that, and it came out that they were doing that. They had a lot to do with all of that, trafficking their own daughter, and then coming out and saying something totally different from before the trial started. Just a lot of mess, and you have, I believe, someone behind bars that's it shouldn't be there. But anyway, getting back to this, I wonder how many of the perpetrator camp, who was in the perpetrator camp. That's what I'm saying, and are they going to be held accountable? Because right now, they're saying that it was one, but I believe it probably was a lot more in this young woman's case. And so she has went through a lot. Her voice cracks with emotion when she's telling the story. There's long pauses at particularly graphic details that her trauma persists. DeCosta said her captor raped her and beat her until she joined the 3 other women being held there and soliciting sex work on street corners. And another name for a human trafficker is a pimp. Pimping them. But not just that, but, raping them to gain control, repeatedly raping them until they feel some type of connection with their rapist. And that's the control that they use, is when they keep raping them over and over until they feel some type of connection there, form of control. And and then also beating the victim. And this is what the perpetrator does, the trafficker, the rapist. That's what they do. And so on some nights, after handing the man everything she had earned, DeCosta would lie awake on the floor and pray for it all to end. She said she was broken. She saw no way out. Now in May, DeCosta escaped her captor with the help of her parents. In June, she picked up a basketball for the first time in 7 months. What followed, most valuable player honors in a Bay Area semi-pro league, renewed interest from scouts, and opportunity with a pro club at Sweden's top level suddenly put her childhood dream of making the WNBA back within reach. So she's trying to move forward in her life. And she has another motivation. She knows the WNBA would offer her a national platform to spotlight human trafficking, an often misunderstood crime that experts consider a form of modern day slavery. And that's what I was saying. This is not modern day slavery. This is stuff that's been going on for decades on end, and it was underground a lot. And now it's starting to be more common where perpetrators are capturing their victim in broad daylight. This is happening in broad daylight, and I just don't see where certain organizations and liberal feminine movements or groups and organizations are not stepping in to speak out about this. I mean, speaking out to talk about, one particular person or two or three particular men, no, that's not helping nobody. We need to start looking at the facts and start being for real about this when it comes down to it. Especially, I'm talking about the Me Too movement and other folks and these experts that's talking about, this is modern day slavery. No, it's way more than that. And we need to start holding these perpetrators, traffickers, rapists to the highest, fullest extent of the law, is what I'm saying, because it's like they're trying to downplay what's going on. And you cannot downplay something like this. This is something that will follow her for the rest of her life. She always going to need therapy at some point. She could have relapses. There's going to be a lot of dark moments, and a lot of pain there through it all. And a good support system. That's most important, a good support system. When it comes down to victims that have been truly trafficked, And so, and when we look at the U.S. Department of State, 24.9 million people are trafficked worldwide at any given time, with girls and women accounting for more than 70% of victims. In 2020, 10,583 reports involving 16,658 victims were made to the U.S. National Human Trafficking Hotline, and numbers that experts estimate represent a fraction of the actual problem. Fear, despair, and shame keep many victims from speaking out. And that's what I said on, when I do these type of videos, is that a lot of victims, the real victims, you will never see them speaking out. A lot of them won't speak out. A lot of them will not come forward. And they are real victims. And then you have the ones out here that are for profit, that are speaking out, and they're still on the internet, doing things that all I can say is that there's real victims and there's fake victims. And because if you've been following a lot that's been going on, you know the story. And so, but it's a lot of real victims out here that will never get justice. They'll never get their justice, or they'll never speak out because of the shame and despair and the fear of reliving it all over again, of what happened to them. And so as DeCosta began to address her trauma in recent months through therapy, meditation, and candid conversations with loved ones, she couldn't shake the feeling that she should do more to help those still under a captor's control. And that's what I was saying, is that, when we look at these liberal feminine groups and these organizations and movements, what more can be done? What can they do to step up to help? Because we've said enough of how they're not stepping up unless it is someone that can bring a lot of money into their organization or their movement, or their group. And so it looks like all they're doing is help, going after rich men. And there are families just like this family here. This isn't uncommon. This is a normal path for a lot of students that are wanting to go to college, and athletes, going into college, and this is not an unnormal path for her to take. She's in high school, she's playing basketball, she's good at it. She started playing when she was a little girl, and here we are, and so it's nothing abnormal about her life. Nothing abnormal. And so, so why is it that it has to be somebody that's rich in order for them to step up and help? Why does it have to be someone with money that, in order for them to step up and help? And when I say money, I'm talking about the men that they go after in these liberal feminine groups and movements. They go after men with money, and then they get enough women that say they've been harmed and it's consensual, and that's who they want to help because they can make money. And it's really sad, because if they was really, these feminine groups, if they was really, and movements really who they say they are, then why aren't they helping? And see, that's the narrative that was put out there, that they put out there. It's not us putting it out there. They put it out there, but they're not standing up and owning up to what they stand for. And then they create a documentary, and it's like one person might have came out and spoke Hampton, but then where's the rest of them speaking out and saying, you know what, we have a person over here, we want to help, we want to support, we want to be there, if they need us, because we just learned of this or something like that. Like in this young lady's case, or in the other lady's case, the one that is from Des Moines, Iowa, and she served time, and she pleaded because she, to me, probably didn't understand her rights, and now she's having to pay restitution to the trafficker, the rapist, the perpetrator's family. So where are they speaking out of? Where's the Me Too movement at with this? Because these stories are public information. This isn't stuff that, that are private. This is public information. When the real victims come forward to speak out, where are these organizations? Even with, I can't think of her name, the one with, the Breakfast Club guy. I'm going to just say that. Her. What about her? They refused to help her, allegedly, from what I've been reading about. They didn't want to help her. Why? Because, her perpetrator, he actually is part of the Me Too movement. He actually, supports that. And he's protected. And it's really sad, when it comes down to, who gets help, who gets support, and who does not. And thank God that she does have her loved ones to support her. She has a support system, and it sounds like she has a good one. And she may gain even more of a support system when she re-enters back into, getting her basketball career back on track. And so, she says it's time to take her power back. And she says, if this could happen to me, it could happen to almost anyone, which is absolutely correct, because she's not the only one. She's definitely not the only one. So on a muggy morning in late August, DeCosta walked her old high school hallways. She wondered aloud whether her favorite art teacher would recognize her, because she had, it's been almost half a decade since she had last seen her. And she, at St. Mary's High School, and her teacher name was Miss Jean Aguilar, but she had put tattoos all over her body. And now the Bible verse across her left abdomen warns of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing. Images of rap albums that helped her recover from a suicide attempt adorn her left leg, and on the right side of her face a broken heart over the date that her girlfriend was murdered. And now the ink maps the admittedly self-destructive spiral that plunged DeCosta's life into chaos, leaving a McDonald's All-American without a team. She was a McDonald's All-American. And the tattoos also make it easy to overlook the small scar below her left eye, a reminder of her kidnapping, where he beat her. And she has real scars to show. And we're talking about real victims. We're not talking about these ones with plastic surgery and, and all on the internet doing, this kind of stuff. And we're not talking about that. That kind of stuff that I've seen over the last, several years disgust me. It really does. Because you have real victims out here. And it is a hard story to get through, but I'm going to get through it. You know, just like that other story, but I'm going to get through it. I'm going to get through it. But it's a hard story because these people don't really, okay. Um, so Aguilar says, we're all so proud of you, fighting back tears as she hugged DeCosta. You've had quite a journey, girl. And DeCosta replies, you have no idea. No idea. That's the thing. No idea of what these real victims are going through. And so on a quiet cul-de-sac, the northwest edge of Stockton, DeCosta sat in the living room of her parents' house, pictures from the high points of her basketball odyssey, big amateur athletic union wins, a state title at St. Mary's, Team USA medals, a national championship with Baylor University, lined the room, walls, and mantle. So she's going back and she's reflecting, reflecting on what her life was before she was captured by her human sex trafficker. And so it was from USC's Cynthia Cooper Dyke, a two-time WNBA MVP, whose YouTube highlights DeCosta had devoured. I wasn't even thinking about college, DeCosta said. All I could think was, wait, Cynthia Cooper knows who I am. So the summer before ninth grade, DeCosta sat down with her AAU coach and trainer, Lenini Noah, and made a plan. 4 years, a prep powerhouse, St. Mary's, 3 or 4 years at the college program of her choosing, then on to the WNBA. Standing 6'2" at age 14, DeCosta could already dunk a volleyball with ease. She had skills. She still has skills. I believe she does. And I'd be praying for this young woman, be praying for her, that she makes it. And sometimes it's hard, when that type of trauma come up on you and you've been through it, sometimes it's hard. That trauma can weigh you down. But we pray that she, can get past, be able to deal with it to become the star athlete that she already was, okay? And so by the time DeCosta helped lead St. Mary's to a state title as a freshman of Carl's Haas Pavilion, a national recruiting service had tabbed her as the top player in her high school class. She often had 20 points and 15 rebounds by halftime of her St. Mary's games. She dominated even against the world's best competition, winning MVP honors at the 2017 FIBA 3-on-3 Under-18 World Cup after guiding Team USA to gold. To this day, I've never seen a girl with a better vertical leap, said DeCosta's coach, a St. Mary's Tom Gonzalez, whose ex-players include four-time WNBA All-Star Chelsea Gray and former #1 recruit Jackie Gamilas. Aquira played her best when she was playing against better competition, and she was able to do that because of her athleticism. And that's really, really cute, really good. When you're able to play up against the best competition there is out there, and it will help you improve your game. Okay? And so when college coaches looked at DeCosta, they saw a humble player who once handed the MVP trophy she won at a high-profile tournament to a less touted teammate. What they didn't see was a teenager beginning to struggle with anxiety and depression. On a handful of occasions, her mother called Noah, asking her to give DeCosta a pep talk about her lagging grades. There were times DeCosta said when the pressure to succeed left her shaky and short of breath. When she committed to Baylor in Waco, Texas in the fall of her senior year, her closest confidants worried. Someone who had needed hands-on support at St. Mary's was joining 4 other 5-star players in the nation's top-ranked recruiting class. Knowing Aquira, she didn't want to disappoint people, Noah said. She heard a lot of stuff. With her going to a big school like Baylor, she kind of wondered, what if she goes through tough times? Who will be there to pick her up? See, that's why it's important to have a good support system. Even when you go off to college, you need a good support system. And not only that, when you are pressured because everybody's looking at you, and people tend to put people up on pedestals, and everybody's looking at you, so you feel you can't fail, you can't make a mistake, and that's difficult when people do it, and people do it all the time. They put people up on pedestals. They're pressuring you. They are Get the, you got to do it. You got to do it. You could do it. You could do it. There's no time for that. And you could be depressed about something else in your own life growing up, because there's a lot of stuff that we've been there. Young people, we grow up and we go through things, and they don't want to, you don't have time to rest. You don't have time to go through your stuff, because everybody is counting on you to make that next goal, to make that final, to be the star, your team to win, the champion, the goal, whatever it might be. And so you don't have time to sit back and reflect. And if you're sad about something, because it's normal for teenagers to go through stuff, like it's normal for adults to go through things. So they don't have time to reflect on what they're going through and how to get through it. And then when they try to share it and open up, they tell them to be quiet. Oh, never mind, we don't have time for that. How can you tell people that you don't have time to talk to them about their issues that have nothing to do with their career that they're shooting for, that they're striving for? And that's why it's important to talk to your children. Sit down and have conversations with them, even if they are athletic, even if they are good at what they do. Sit down and have conversations, normal conversation that have nothing to do with their extracurricular activities. Sit down and talk to them about what's going on, to make sure they're straight, to make sure they're okay. Because you hear what she was saying, that she was struggling with anxiety and depression because she didn't want to disappoint people. She didn't want to. And so, yes, you need pep talks, but you don't just need pep talks. You need someone to encourage you, to listen to what you're going through, so that you're strengthened by that. And I'm reading where a pep talk, usually is different from someone just sitting down and saying, you know what, let's go to lunch. Let's go to lunch. You and me. Tell me what's going on. Let's not talk about basketball. Let's not talk about football. Let's not talk about volleyball. Let's not talk about track. Whatever, put that aside and really see that person for who they are and talk to them about them. What's going on with you? How's your friends doing? How's your relationship going? Are you in a relationship? Are they treating you well? How's your grades? I'm struggling in math. Okay, get me a tutor. These type of things, just normal conversations. And I think people tend to forget that, because sometimes people are just looking at your stardom and they want to see you succeed. But there's nothing wrong with seeing a person succeed. But what about the normal everyday life issues that come up that people are not addressing? They want to push that aside or under the rug. And so she hid a lot of stuff. She didn't want to disappoint people. But it didn't take long for Nora and others to see their fears realized. The headline of her 2018 freshman class so loaded that it was dubbed the Fierce Five. DeCosta didn't play up to expectations. When she started to slip into a deep sadness, she didn't feel as if anyone in the program would understand. DeCosta said she wasn't especially close to her teammates, and that unless she scheduled a meeting, then Baylor coach Kim Mulkey wasn't available for one-on-ones. In late October 2019, almost 7 months after she watched from the bench as the Bears beat Notre Dame for a national title, DeCosta left Baylor. They didn't have time for her. She left. They didn't have time. Because it's all about success. And I'm not here to put Baylor University down, but it's all about success. And they don't have time for your depression and anxiety. That's what it sounds like. And we have to make time for these athletes, these young star athletes. There needs to be some type of therapy involved. They need to make time to give them what they need. You want me to give you what you want. You want me to make sure the team wins, but you're not making sure that I'm okay. And that's important too. And so 3 weeks later, she landed at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles, which offered her a small school environment, a short flight home, and a featured role. In the news release announcing DeCosta's transfer, LMU coach Charity Elliott heralded her arrival to say Aquira is a game changer, she said, is an understatement. So maybe that was best for her, at a smaller, college, because Baylor is a big university, and they made their name. And so sometimes that's what it takes, is to take a break away from the big chaos and move in to something smaller that can help you succeed. And they can, give you that one-on-one that you need. And so after dazzling practice as she set out the 2019-20 season under NCAA transfer rules, DeCosta returned to Stockton that March when the campus shut down over COVID-19. Late one night in April, amid a severe depressive episode, she attempted suicide by overdosing on pills in her bedroom. She woke up cuffed to a hospital bed, scared and confused. She screamed until she was restrained by a security officer. "You don't belong here," the officer told DeCosta. He remembered her from St. Mary's. Somebody remembered her. So for 30 minutes, he talked to DeCosta about all she had to live for, about the joy her basketball talent could bring others. He told her she had a lot to live for. He mentioned basketball, and that was her passion. But he told her it's more than just that. You have a lot to live for. And there's nothing wrong with reminding them of, their passion. But he told her all the things she had to live for. And he remembered her. He remembered her. Because a lot of times you're just a stat on the court, trying to help them meet their stats. And so it's so important that we have these conversations with our young people. So over the next few months, DeCosta's girlfriend, Rashanique Jasmine Packard, helped care for her while sharing her own struggles with depression. DeCosta often made the 2-hour drive to Packard's home in Fresno, where they watched cartoons with Packard's young daughter and recorded TikTok videos. The two had almost met at a basketball. The two, had met at a basketball game due to DeCosta's senior year of high school. When DeCosta was homesick at Baylor, she would talk to Packard late into the night. What started as a friendship slowly blossomed into a romance. They talked about marriage. Packard, an aspiring model, made plans to visit DeCosta in Los Angeles. She was very compassionate, DeCosta said of Packard. She would always put herself last when it came to the people she loved. Now, in October 2020, about 2 months after she returned to the LMU, DeCosta was leaving practice when she saw an Instagram post on her iPhone. "Rest in peace, Jasmine." Packard had been dropping off a friend in Fresno when she was killed in an early morning shooting. She was 27. A month later, LMU's season opener, DeCosta flew back to Stockton, her heart broken and her basketball career in flux. "It was the most difficult, upsetting situation I've ever been a part of," Elliott said. "The most ridiculous circumstances came together to just create something that no person really can handle, especially someone who's been through as much as Aquira's been through." DeCosta failed to keep up with her coursework remotely. When she decided to transfer again, only one college offered her a spot, Shawnee State, an NAIA school in southern Ohio. Shortly after arriving on the tiny campus last September, DeCosta dropped out. She said she believed she had been given a full scholarship, but learned it covered only about 20% of her $15,000 annual tuition. Then in December, while DeCosta was back in Stockton with no college prospects and waning for hope for her future, a relative informed her she'd been adopted as a child. Born 3 months premature to a mother who used drugs, Aquira entered the world weighing just 4 pounds. Randolph and Charmaine DeCosta took in Aquira and her younger half-brother, Paul, as foster children before adopting them when they were young. The DeCosta said they had never found the right time to tell Aquira and Paul the truth. The revelation shocked Aquira. Even as it began to make some sense, Randolph is 5'7", Charmaine is 5'2". She said, "I felt completely lost." DeCosta said, "Everything that made up my identity, basketball, my sense of family, had been ripped away from me in a matter of days." And they were short, and that's the only reason why I chuckled, because she's like, it made sense. You 6'2", and you got some very short parents. So desperate to be somewhere, anywhere other than at home with her parents, DeCosta slipped into her transient lifestyle. She recalled stuffing her backpack with clothes and vanishing for days at a time in her dad's black 2006 Honda Ridgeline. When she got too drunk to drive, she would sleep in the bed of the pickup or on an acquaintance's couch. DeCosta said she was far too trusting of people who she barely knew. New friends, many of them struggling to support themselves, took advantage of her generosity. Some did worse. Now, Akira is a very loving person, Noah says. She doesn't see bad in people in general, and that's her being naive. She's always willing to help other people before she helps herself. Unfortunately, that can get her in trouble. That can get a lot of people in trouble when you put other people before yourself all the time without using good judgment. She was naive, and in this sense she was, because she didn't use good judgment when she helped other people. And a lot of times you have to use judgment. Sometimes you just help. You know what I mean? You don't think about it. You have no reservations. You do it. But when you are in a situation as in her, it's good to learn some things and to pick, out, who you're going to support when you see that they're just using you. And so we learned that over time. And I think you all understand where I'm going, what I'm saying when I say that. Yes, some people you're going to automatically help. You're not even going to have reservations. But sometimes when we always help people, it can lead to trouble. It will lead to trouble. And especially people that don't care about you, and they see your vulnerability, and they see you're not being naive, and they will use that against you and start taking advantage of you. And basically, that's what happened in her case. And so at a party that winter, DeCosta said she met a woman who invited her to stay over at her apartment in Sacramento. As DeCosta left the apartment around 10 one morning in early February, 2 vehicles pulled in front of her. A man jumped out of one, 2 women emerged from the other. DeCosta remembers the man grabbing her keys while the woman forced her into the back seat of the Ridgeline. When DeCosta screamed for help, one of the women pistol whipped her, leaving the cut below DeCosta's left eye. The man, DeCosta said, warned her that the woman with the gun would shoot her if she screamed again. For the next 20 minutes, they drove in silence. I knew my life had changed forever, she said. And that party she probably went to, that's probably where they scoped, they scoped her out. And it might be where they scoped her out. And she was in front of an apartment, and the person that befriended her and let her stay over probably had something to do with, her kidnapping. Probably had something to do with it. So DeCosta wasn't physically shackled during her 3 months at a 4-bedroom house in northwest Sacramento, but she said she felt in prison. Her captor had found out where her family had lived and promised to kill them if she made trouble, she said. He also took her to a DMV office and made her change the home address to her driver's license. Now, made her change the home address on her driver's license, Now, when her captor wasn't satisfied with the money DeCosta and the 3 other women were making him on the streets of Sacramento, he drove them up Interstate 5 to walk red light districts in Portland and Seattle. At each stop, DeCosta said she was forced to wear a blonde wig, tight skirt, and heels. It was all about taking on a new identity, a new life, Charmaine said. Every couple of days, DeCosta called her parents from one of her captor's cell phones, the speakerphone on which he stood beside her and listened. The conversations never changed. A few minutes in duration, vague explanations about being okay, no response to questions about where she was located. Randolph and Charlemagne said they suspected something was wrong, but didn't know DeCosta had been kidnapped. Shortly after she stopped coming home, her parents had filed a missing person report, only to retract it days later when she assured them she was safe. And she had to do that. Yeah, there's a reason she had to do that. She had a habit of leaving for days at a time, so we thought maybe she was hopping from place to place in our car, Randolph said. But as a parent, you can tell when something is amiss with your child. We never stopped worrying. Added Charmaine, I couldn't sleep. I just kept asking my husband, where is our baby girl? Where is she? Little more than an hour's drive from her parents' home in a typical middle-class neighborhood, DeCosta was losing hope. She was in a neighborhood, a middle-class neighborhood, where no one would suspect someone was being held, or women were being held against their will, false imprisonment. No one suspected that. And that's what happened, with those children, the Turpin children. They lived in a middle-class neighborhood too, and nobody suspected that they were being held captive and hostage by their own parents and being abused. And it happens a lot. I'm telling you, it happens a lot, because these days a lot of people don't know their neighbors, and they barely see them. And a lot of times the perpetrators make it where people don't get to know them. And so this is where she was at, in a middle-class neighborhood, in a 4-bedroom, probably modest, nice home, and nobody suspected of what was going on. Crazy, man. That's very crazy. And so she had contracted multiple STD infections. Her captor had burned her with a lighter and pushed her downstairs. DeCosta said, that when one of the other women disobeyed the man, he had stomped her head into the garage's cement floor and split her face open. DeCosta and the woman were forced to watch, horrified. That was his way of telling us all, don't listen to me, and this could happen to you. The worst part might have been the children. DeCosta said she shared a small bed with another woman and that woman's young daughter. Wow, who seemed oblivious to the atrocities unfolding around them. One morning in early May, after the man gave his own young daughter a black eye, DeCosta saw the woman cover the child's bruising with makeup. He gave the little girl a black eye. The little girl said she was going to tell her teacher she had fallen or something, DeCosta said, like she already had an excuse ready. You could tell it wasn't her first time. At that point, I knew I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't take it. About an hour later, she was in the living room when she heard a familiar voice at the front door. It was her dad. He was explaining to one of the other women that he had received parking tickets with the home's address on them. The ridge line was registered in Randolph's name. He said that when DeCosta captor was cited for parking illegally on the street in front of his house, the bills were mailed to the family home in Stockton. DeCosta, barefoot and in a blonde wig, stepped closer to the front door. Her captor had left the house. When Randolph saw DeCosta, he asked her what was going on. The other women walked upstairs. Randolph, his voice low, asked DeCosta whether she needed to run. When she nodded, he told her his car was parked around the corner. He'd keep the engine running. DeCosta, worried that the other women had gone to grab one of her captor's miniguns, she walked upstairs to see. The other woman, she said, was calling the man. DeCosta sprinted out the front door and climbed into the back of her dad's Kia Sedona. As the car sped away, DeCosta broke down in tears. Charmaine was in the passenger seat. My baby, she screamed. We got my baby. The next day, DeCosta said she tried to contact the acquaintance she had visited in Sacramento before she was kidnapped. The woman had blocked DeCosta's number and social media accounts. That's when I knew what she had done, DeCosta said. See, that's what I was saying earlier, is that she went to that party and she probably was mingling with the people that had something to do with it. And the lady that stayed overnight, stayed in her apartment. She had something to do with it. And that's, the acquaintance. And she blocked her and everything because she knows what she's done. And she knew, but that's what she didn't know at first. And so about a week later, after initially refusing to discuss her kidnapping, DeCosta relented and at her father's urging gave the Sacramento Police Department a statement. DeCosta said her captor has yet to be arrested. In the months following her escape, DeCosta's parents hardly let her out of their sight. They drove her to and from practice and games, took her on long walks, and reminded her again and again how much they loved her. I've come to realize that family is really all I need, she said. Now, at DeCosta's October 8th debut with her pro team in Sweden, nears the paranoia that lingered after her imprisonment is beginning to subside. She no longer appears outside her bedroom window in fear that her captor is approaching. Gun in hand, she can talk about her ordeal without shedding a tear. Now that's getting somewhere. Being able to talk about your trauma without shedding a tear. So through Zoom therapy sessions, DeCosta has learned to accept that what happened to her was not her fault. And that's a big thing when it comes to being a victim and a survivor. You can't blame yourself for what other people's actions are. And that's important. Don't blame yourself for other people's actions. And a lot of times as victims, you blame yourself. Could you have done something differently? What did you do wrong? What did you do to make people angry? What did you do for people to do this to you? I should have did this. I should have did that. You start to think like that. And that's what I'm saying. So in this case, they encouraged her, and she learned that it's not her fault. And it wasn't her fault. It was the people that were committing these crimes. That's all of their faults. And that's why I'm saying everybody involved in that situation needs to be held accountable. And hopefully her captor will be caught. So every morning she opens a meditation app on her iPhone. And if you need meditation, there are apps out here, meditation apps that can help you, And then remember the self-compassion meditation exercise I also gave you all. But on my channel to whoever wanted to go and participate in that. But there are meditation apps out here that can help you. And so the sound of her Tibetan singing bowl, a gift from a former teammate, calms her when she feels anxious. Also helps knowing that millions of women share stories like hers. She's not the only one, okay? And but she's not the only one, but she's right now. I'm talking about sharing her story with you all. And so Kara Smith, Chief of Analytics for Deliver Fund, a nonprofit organization focused on ending human trafficking in the U.S., said many Americans' understanding of the issue is framed mostly by fictional media narratives about underage girls smuggled across the southern border, shipped stateside in containers. But according to the Department of Justice, 83% of victims in confirmed sex trafficking cases are American citizens. Right here in America, you all, is what's happening. Not just like she said, of shipped in cases and all that. That has happened, but they're right here. That's why I said it's becoming more out in the open, like it's becoming normal, because they're doing it in the broad daylight, and it's people out here pimping, out here, they call it human sex trafficking, but it's pimps out here pimping young women, grabbing them, and some of them live on the street, some of them have run away, they're homeless, they're vulnerable, and they're living on the street, and they get caught up in it as well, okay? And so shortly after DeCosta returned home, she learned that Northern California is one of the country's biggest centers of human trafficking. Northern California. A study released in July by Sacramento nonprofit Community Against Sexual Harm said that 13,079 people were sexually trafficked in Sacramento County between 2015 and 2020. One of the 158 victims interviewed for that study, 94% were female, with an average age of 20. Black victims were disproportionately represented, comprising almost 50% of the known victims. Though black people make up 11% of county residents, many of the women interviewed gave accounts similar to DeCosta's. See, I want to go back right there. Black victims were disproportionately represented, comprising almost 50% of the known victims. 50%. 50% of real victims. And we're out here playing around with fake victims and foolishness when it's 50% of real black victims. And overall, 94% were female. So 6% are male. But 94% of the human sex trafficking victims are female. And of that, black victims were disproportionately represented, comprising almost 50% of the known victims. Though black people make up 11% of the county residents. And we keep talking about where are these movements and organizations to help. What it sounds like DeCosta went through is textbook human trafficking, Smith said. That's how that happens here in the U.S., and it can happen to anybody. All you have to do is just have that one little vulnerability that a trafficker can manipulate. Heck, the trafficker can even create the vulnerability for you. That's what I was saying, is they probably study. They study them. They study them. Something about them that they're dealing with. Something, because we have weak strengths and weaknesses. And they probably studied something about her. And she might have shared something with her acquaintance. And they saw that. They saw that. So when DeCosta arrived at her first Oakland switch practice in early June, she walked head down to the empty side of the gym away from her teammates. She felt isolated. She felt ashamed. Yeah, you could tell, walking with her head down to the empty side of the gym, away from her teammates, she didn't join in. Switch coach Camille Williams, who has worked in basketball since 1991, could sense that DeCosta had been through some sort of trauma. Before beginning his first drill, Williams told her that she had a fresh start. Williams said, I had no idea what exactly she had dealt with, but just in her eyes, you could see it. There was a hurt there that was unmistakable. So a couple of weeks earlier, an old friend had asked DeCosta to join the upstart Women's Premier Basketball Association, a semi-pro league meant to help Bay Area players land contracts overseas. The Swish would waive her trial, but for almost a decade, Williams had followed DeCosta's career closely, eager to work with someone so physically gifted. He asked her to start slowly, to focus on the basics, defending, running, rebounding, but by the second half or second game, DeCosta already looked like the versatile forward who sorted through piles of college scholarship offers, playing against overseas pros and former college standouts. She averaged 24 points, 10.8 rebounds, 2.5 steals, and 1.5 blocks per game as she led the Swish to a league title. That's some good stats right there. After considering offers from pro teams in Kosovo and Ireland, DeCosta signed with the Stockholm-based club Albic Basket, which viewed her as the missing piece for a group that has lost 2 straight league championship games. Advisor told DeCosta it represented her best chance at a WNBA contract. She has a shot, Williams said. Even in the WNBA, there aren't a whole lot of people with Aquira's combination of size and athleticism. So on the muggy day in late August, DeCosta was cutting through a crowd of St. Mary's students during lunch break when she noticed 7 girls waving at her outside the school snack shop. And remember, she went back to the high school on that muggy day in August. So they were basketball players who had seen DeCosta's McDonald's All-American jersey hanging below Chelsea's gray in the gym and heard tales of her glory days. A brown-haired girl with braces asked the question so many have had over the past year, are you still playing college ball? She says, DeCosta says, I play pro now. So Williams had recently told DeCosta that she could become a motivational speaker. As DeCosta puffed out her chest, smiled, and began to speak, the girls moved closer. Don't let any of these little boys distract you, DeCosta said. You've got to stay focused. You can achieve whatever you set your mind to. The night before, her nightmare had returned. This time, though, it was slightly different. Just as the man chasing her was about to raise his gun, her perspective changed. DeCosta could see herself on the street. Then everything faded to black. So strange, she thought when she woke in the morning. I Googled it, and apparently seeing yourself like that is supposed to mean that you're moving past whatever has been bothering you, DeCosta said. I haven't had the nightmare since. Now, I know this was a long video, but it's important to understand what's going on here. And share the video, share this young woman's story, because we need young girls to understand that they got to stay focused. They have to protect themselves. They have to stay alert and protect themselves at all costs. We want young people to enjoy their youth, to live their life, to pursue their goals and dreams. But we also want to make sure that they're not being easily manipulated, easily persuaded, and allowing their vulnerability to get the best of them. And I think that because of this young woman and what she was going through, you know, like she said, you know, she go places and do things and be gone days at a time is what her parents said. And then, you know, she went to a party and stayed over someone's house that she barely knew, on their couch in their apartment that she barely knew. It was just an acquaintance. Didn't know anything about her background, didn't know anything about her history. And this woman was participating in HST. And as she's leaving, a car pulls up. And they target her. How is that possible? Because it's possible because the woman that she stayed over at the apartment, she contacted them. And see, Aquira, Miss DeCosta, probably shared something, you know, allegedly. We do talk. And she might have shared just a little about her life. And they could have studied her. You never know. We never know what they do. But again, she knew. And so this is, the perpetrator knew. Because she's part of it. And I'm thankful that she made it out alive and her parents didn't give up on her. I'm so thankful. And that's an act of God. You know, with those tickets, and the father shows up at that address because he got the tickets that came to the house because the car was registered to him. And see, that was the good news, because the car wasn't registered to her. It was registered to her dad. So, of course, the tickets that get on the car are going to go to the home address. Not the one on her driver's license where he made her change it to make it look like she was living there and nothing was going on. Everything was normal. Like she was just a tenant, renting a room. So the father showed up. And that's an act of God that the trafficker wasn't there. The perpetrator wasn't there at the time, because it could have turned a whole different way. And then you have the other ones. When she went upstairs to check, and it's a good thing that she went upstairs to check. They were calling the trafficker. So they probably are still stuck. And one of them had a daughter. And he beating on the daughter. And you know what he's going to do once the daughter probably is of age? Put her on the street. Or maybe the mother will put her on the street. And it's a sad situation. Very, very sad. But in this case, I wish her the best. She's getting through it. She's come a long way, it seems, as she tells her story. And, she has a meditation app. She's getting the therapy. She has a good support system. And that's good news. That's good news, being that she's been through all that she's been through. And so you all leave your comments below. Share the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber. Thank you for tuning in. And this is public information that needs to be shared, because we definitely need to protect our young women and men, young girls and boys. We need to protect them. We need to protect them. We need to protect them, and we need to teach them, because we definitely don't want them. These stories that we're hearing, these are hard stories. And then if you see something going on, contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. Okay? And so God bless you all on today. Peace out.